There's been a lot of exciting talks this morning. I think one common theme that keeps coming up is one of the challenges we continue to face in the clinical research industry is recruiting patients for trials. And in the oncology space, that becomes even more challenging. What we haven't seen is a significant move in the ability to recruit patients into oncology trials over the last 20 or 30 years. On average, only 3 to 5% of eligible patients actually participate in oncology trials. And that was really before the advent of and breakout of kind of molecular targets and genomics associated with precision oncology, which has made finding patients even more challenging for clinical trials as the complexity of inclusion and exclusion criteria includes a significant amount of data coming from genomics lab, molecular marker data, et cetera. And so one of the challenges that providers and study coordinators in clinical trials have is just the sheer volume of data and having to pour through that data to try to connect precision oncology patients to the appropriate trial. And so in my daily job, one of the things we try to solve all the time for is patient recruitment. And as technology continues to advance, we see more and more companies out there that are leading the edge, utilizing technology to help us accelerate patient enrollment, specifically in oncology trials. And so I am thrilled to be able to introduce Simon Arkell from a company called Deep Lens, who I've had the opportunity over the last several months to work with. I believe that the solution that Simon's company has created will be a hallmark for helping us change that low figure of 3 to 5% in oncology trials participating to, even if we could double or triple it, it would make a significant impact on patient lives relative to oncology diagnoses. So I'd like to introduce Simon and really have him talk about the Deep Lens technology, which is called Viper, and explain how their technology can help us better identify patients that have molecular markers and genomic markers for their oncology diseases and how we match those patients to trials. So Simon, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Ken. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you great.
Great, thanks for the introduction, I appreciate it. So my name's Simon Arkell. I'm one of the co-founders of Deep Lens, and we're a venture capital-backed software company that has been focusing in this space of patient enrollment for oncology clinical trials. We started the company 3 or 4 years ago with a specific goal of fixing what is a very expensive problem, expensive not just in terms of financial impact, but obviously patient outcomes. And when we started the company, we took a digital pathology platform called Viper that our CEO and my co-founder Dave Billiter had developed at Nationwide Children's Hospital, but very quickly realized that there was a huge opportunity to take this new web-based, cloud-based technology, make it HIPAA compliant, and not only use pathology, whether it's digital pathology or pathology reports, all of the structured and unstructured data that you see there, but to pair that up with the medical record. And of course, more recently, with the genomic test results. So what you're seeing from a lot of the reference labs that are performing these molecular tests these days is that, historically, you've had to go for specific types of tests with each vendor, dependent on what their specialty was. They were delivering that as some sort of PDF report, and a human being would have to read that and try and decipher it, and then pair that up with the other data that was available to the research coordinator or the head of research, as an example, and somehow manually try and match that patient to the clinical trial. And we saw just huge inefficiencies with this. We spoke to dozens, if not hundreds, of providers when we were putting together this solution. And we realized that there was a great opportunity to automate the ingestion of data from obviously the pathology and medical record, which is nothing new. It's not easy, but it's nothing new. But to really be one level abstracted from the reference labs so that you didn't have to go to search into the portal at Caris or the portal at FMI, Foundation Medicine, NeoGenomics, et cetera, separately and try and manually pair that data up in order to find the match. So we're able to ingest that data that's coming as a machine readable format from those labs, whether that's using natural language processing to take the PDF, which is delivered electronically, break that down, put it into the database, which I'll get to. But these days they're providing those feeds as pure XML feeds that are machine readable, and we can ingest them and a lot more information that is not covered by the PDF report. We can normalize that and make it searchable across all lab vendors. And now our automated solution, but with a human touch, is able to look across all patients, any genomics test they've ever had, regardless of the vendor, integrate that and mash that data up with the medical record, pathology, and other manually entered data, and then pair that to the inclusion-exclusion criteria for each clinical trial that is running at that site or at that IDN. And we automate the ingestion of the criteria for the clinical trial, and then the AI, using natural language processing, using robotic process automation, machine learning, etc., is matching up the criteria. Now, we realized also that there is no silver bullet with technology, so we bring in and provide a research coordinator at a site or a network at our cost. And all of this is available to providers completely free of charge, because it's creating so much transparency in the conversation between the site and the sponsor. And of course, CROs like PRA, although you're a tech company too, a big CRO that can really move the needle with regard to clinical trial recruitment in a way that was never done before because of the automation that's now possible.
And so, Simon, I know you guys have published some data on case studies on just what does this actually mean at the site. So how do we translate that into the value for the patient, so we ensure that patients aren't falling through the cracks, that we're identifying them? I mean, do you have data out there that shows kind of what the value is from a volume perspective?
Yeah, we've published studies in ASCO 2020, for instance. We published a paper on one study we did with a site that had an individual research coordinator that we put in, was able to review and screen 5,500 patients, identify over 1,000 tumors, multiple tumor types, and then match those to clinical trials. I think 16 were in the analysis, and many of them were precision-based, where the molecular profile and the mutation was highly relevant to the match between the patient and the trial. So we had fabulous outcomes from that. We also, in a case that you're quite familiar with, were able to get an introduction to a biotech very recently that very quickly was able to onboard one of our sites to their study. And that took 2 to 3 weeks in a fairly rapid ramp up for that particular site. But within 2 days of just signing the contract, we were actually screening patients 2 or 3 weeks ahead of the site even being onboarded, because we could ingest the protocol for the trial. And so what we've been able to do is identify many, many patients that the site would not have identified on their own. And we've actually had patients enroll specifically because of this technology and that services-based approach with partners like PRA.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, what we're seeing is, the speed with which technology advancements are happening, specifically in, whole exome sequencing and genomic sequencing and markers, and with general panels being available to virtually every community oncologist today, just the volume of data is almost overwhelming to any community practice, not only just to treat a patient, right, of the multiple drugs that are out there and the labels that are provided based on whatever marker the patient has, but then you add in the complexity of trials and how do you do that? And so when you say it's free for the institution, how does that process work? So if I'm a physician and I've got a 10-doc practice and we would like to utilize a technology like Deep Lens or Viper, I mean, how complex is that for me as an institution to install?
Yeah, we just signed the profile you just described last week, in fact, and it's an East Coast community practice at a couple of sites, a number of oncologists, and very few resources to actually screen patients, although they know patients are falling through the cracks. Once they gave us the thumbs up through an introduction, or after an introduction to their IT team, who obviously need to make sure this is compliant, and we're fully HIPAA compliant, never failed one of those tests. We were able to sign a very simple subscription agreement, which gives them the right to use the technology free of charge. And we're going to provide a virtual triage service to be able to remote in and help with the screening process there. It was very, very easy. I would say that at some of the larger institutions and networks, and we recently signed a very large network, and they were, the most delay that we saw there was a result of kind of compliance reviews, if you will. Legal's fairly easy, but compliance usually is an IT issue, and IT is typically overwhelmed. And this is not always the front of the queue, so you have to get in line.
And for the technology folks and the CIOs and CTOs that may be listening, this is a cloud-based solution, correct? So there's no challenges with on-prem servers or trying to get in behind firewalls or anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a cloud-based service, fully HIPAA compliant, as I said, and GDPR. But it connects to those data sources. But we're experts in data integration, and there are many companies out there that provide that integration layer between the medical record, the lab system. And we're already working directly with the labs for the genomic ingestion. So it's quite easy from our perspective, relatively. The value that gets created as soon as you go live, though, is immediately that you see that no patients can fall through the cracks. It's typically a window of opportunity where a patient, maybe upon initial diagnosis, has a small window to get onto a trial if appropriate. But if they go through first-line therapy and then there's a 4-day window after 11.3 weeks, then of course you have to still be tracking them in order to even hit that window and get the patient enrolled onto the trial. And that always happens with our system because there's no way the data can fall through the cracks, and it's tracked longitudinally.
I know we only have about 1 minute. It's a quick session, but we do have one critical question, which I think is important. So the question is, does the platform integrate with any EHR vendor, regardless of if they're small or big, outpatient, inpatient? Is there any criteria that would limit the deployment of Viper in an EHR?
No, we haven't seen any that we can't work with yet. Some of the smaller oncology-specific EHR systems and the large, Epic, Cerner's, et cetera, are all available either through direct FHIR, HL7 integration, but also through some of those integration vendors out there. So we partner with a company called Redox, as an example, and they've already worked with 50 different EMR systems, EHR systems out there. And so by plugging into them, we're able to leverage the integration they've already done, and we can get access to that data.
Well, I mean, I think that, this is a critical solution for a problem that we all have, which is how do we get more oncology patients into trials, and how do we do it with the complex molecular markers that are out there? This is really an issue of scale. So the more centers that deploy this technology, the more patients we can get into trials, and we can flip that number from 3 to 5% of eligible patients to 10 or 15 or 20%. So I'm thrilled to be able to be a part of deploying this with Deep Lens and Simon. And for institutions that are out there that are interested to find technology solutions to help them better provide more options for their patients, especially in the precision oncology space, feel free to reach out to Simon or myself, and we can connect you. So thank you very much, Simon.
Thanks, Kent. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Simon and Kent.